What difficulties did you face when working together with Egyptian engineers?
Well, Egypt was my second country. I had been working for 6 years in Mozambique, and Mozambique was a country after the independence with a lack of good staff at all levels. And there, after 6 years, you were suffering a little bit of the syndrome of being the one-eyed king in the land of the blind. And it was very good for me to come back to a country, even when I stayed for 3 years after Mozambique in the Netherlands, but then Egypt was my second long-term country, and coming into a country where the level of education and also the self-esteem of the Egyptians was completely different from what I was used to Mozambique. So in the beginning I had difficulties to get used to that, but at the end I appreciated the difference very much to come from a status where you are one of the few knowing a lot and having, although you are young, some experience and we had an enormous amount of freedom in Mozambique. Whatever we could do was done. And then in Egypt, you had to work much more under the guidance already in the 19th of very well qualified Egyptian experts. My director of the Groundwater Research Institute was a full-time professor with a high level of education in the United States and publications, and she knew very well what she wanted with the research institute. So you had to be adapted to the fact that you became much more an advisor and a listener to the needs of the Egyptians, which I liked very much at the end. So we were, as a project, we were much more serving the needs determined by the Egyptians than that we were presenting our own plans and trying to get them accepted. I was the third project in the 90s. It was all under the panel, the Dutch, firstly the drainage panel and later the water management panel. And so the first project already started in the 80s, and then the Dutch people very much were able to formulate the project they thought would be good for the Groundwater Institute. But when I came, I was the third project, and then the Groundwater Institute and its staff knew already much better what they wanted. So they had, for example, themselves thought about the need of this technique of artificial reach out, and they knew that we had a lot of knowledge in the Netherlands. So it was a clear question from their side. And that also meant that we got a lot of support yeah, in terms of also real payments. The real investments to this basin, to the basins and the wells were paid by the Egyptian government and not from the money from the Dutch side. So of course we had a double supervision from the Netherlands embassy, who was the final donor, but also the Egyptian responsibles for the project felt themselves owner of the project, which is at the end the goal of development cooperation, that you transfer ownership of the project, in fact, right from the beginning. And that was much more in Egypt than in Mozambique, for logical reasons.